Hello, my name is NicholassRivas. I talk about politics and stuff, but today I'm actually going to be talking about a hypothetical matchup that we never got to see in the UFC. I typically talk about UFC on Sundays, but there's not much of big news stirring up right now, so I thought it'd be a perfect time to talk about the people that I wished fought and a more controversial opinion, but Tony versus Khabib, a fight that never happened. I think Tony would have won. Now, those who are novice who don't know the timeline of the whole Khabib versus Tony situation, Tony was gonna fight Khabib. He was on this 12 winning streak, and he basically got snubbed in a sense. Like he had a few postponements due to COVID, due to injuries, due for him, and both Khabib were kind of not ducking. I don't like saying ducking each other, but that's what it felt like. Like both of them were set to fight and something would occur. I mean, COVID, that's not something you can say was ducking, but they were supposed to fight. Tony was on this win streak. Obviously, Khabib was on this win streak as well. They were both looking like monsters. It was just a match made in heaven, right? The issue is when it came down to the fight and the potential for their fight, Tony then started losing when he never got that matchup with Khabib, taking on Gaethje, taking on Charles. So it was a hard time to be a fan of Khabib, of Tony, and then of course Khabib retired. So it's the fight that we're never going to see, especially now that Tony's on this losing streak. Why would if even if Khabib came back, would they give him that? The issue with this though is many fans are like, "Oh man, Khabib would have slept him. It would have been an easy day at the office, yada yada yada." I don't think so. I think Tony would have beaten Khabib. I think Tony had the potential, and I think he's just been, on this losing streak, um, and then made him look bad. But I think Tony was the matchup that would have put Khabib at the very least in some sort of bad positions. I mean, when Khabib fought Michael Johnson, it wasn't even close. When Khabib fought Gaethje, it wasn't even close. I mean, Gaethje had some great moments, but Khabib was controlling the pace of the fight. So I know why people think he looks unstoppable, because he does. I mean, Khabib looked unstoppable. Khabib looked like the monster that nobody should ever fight. The issue is, so did Tony. Tony was this crazy fighter, and he was so unique, and his ankle picking skills were insane. Tony had the potential. Now, some say, like, looking at him now, like, Khabib beat Gaethje. You're saying that guy couldn't beat, Gaethje couldn't beat Khabib, so why would Ferguson, who lost to Gaethje, win? It's this MMA math that never really makes sense. There are fighters who counter other fighters all the time. It doesn't make the MMA math make more sense. Let's not hinge upon that. So I think the world definitely got robbed of seeing this fight, because we'll always just be, hypothesizing. But I definitely think Tony would have won. Now here's my breakdown. I'm not just going to keep reiterating I think he would have won without giving you some backup. Tony was and still is an unorthodox fighter. Khabib is in the same vein, a new age wrestler, I guess you could say. Like he's Dagestanian, so those motherfuckers been wrestling before wrestling was a thing. But they were wrestling for, I guess, this like pressure, put them against the cage. They went against everything that you should know when it comes to wrestling. You're like a lot of American wrestlers, you will never put you against a cage. Whereas the Dagestanians, they thrive off of that. They can build off of their pressure while putting you against a cage. That's some new age stuff that I don't think anyone's seen. So Khabib is, I think, as unorthodox as Tony is. And I think when you have two unorthodox fighters, you're going to have a pretty cool, insane fight that we don't really know the outcome of. And I definitely see a world where Khabib doesn't know how to withstand somebody who keeps rolling like Ferguson. Ferguson is this rolling monster who doesn't stop. Like his cardio is insane. I think the pressure that you saw from him with Charles is what you would see when it would come to like a real full-on 1v1. It's always a 1v1, but you would see you wouldn't see this kind of how Charles tried to put pressure with his jiu-jitsu, which was, amazing. Charles is one of the greatest submissioners. I mean, he has the most submissions. and amongst anybody. The thing is though, I think you would have seen a similar outcome with a Tony who didn't know what to do with the wrestler when it came to Khabib, but you would have seen him become more resilient. I think that Khabib we saw with, or that Ferguson we saw with Charles was definitely not the typical was not the typical Tony that we saw. I think after losing to Gaethje, he was probably mentally defeated. So I wanted to see a confident Tony take on a wrestler, because I think you would have seen the same pressure from Charles, where Khabib is putting pressure on Ferguson, and Ferguson is just being resilient. I think Ferguson is the type of guy to out pressure or withstand the pressure of the Khabibs of the world. And that's Khabib's strong suit. The guy is a beast when it comes to putting pressure on people, but he's also not this Terminator. Like, he can be stopped if enough pressure is put. So I think in a world where Khabib tried to use his pressure, his main component, against someone like Tony, I don't think it would have went as he or everyone expects it to be. So I definitely see a world where we can see Tony Khabib at least be a very 50-50 matchup. Not this, oh, he's going to get slept bullshit. Like, that irks me, and that's a big reason I wanted to make this video. I've been wanting to make this video, is seeing now that, like, Islam is going to take on Charles. This is going to be a fucking barn burner. Like, this is going to be neck and neck. And it's similar. Like, I think Charles is a different fighter, of course, from Ferguson. And so is Islam versus Khabib. This is as close as we're going to get, I think. But it's not the same fight. Because in the same vein, I talked about this in my other video where I'm doing predictions. I think Charles has a lot more vet status rather than Islam, who is very young and novice to the game. Even though he's good, even though he can fight his ass off, and he's been fighting since he was a youngin', I think Khabib was a different beast because he had this sort of like knowledge that you get with being a vet, and I think Islam needs to be tried and tested a little bit more. Not to say he has none of that, but I don't see a world where he's as pressure as like a Khabib would be in his prime. So I see Khabib, I see Islam doing very well, but I don't see him having that pressure against Charles. Now, I think if Khabib were to fight Ferguson now, it'd be night and day. Like, it would be Khabib destroying him, and it's because it's a different world for Ferguson right now. But I think in his prime, when he had his confidence and when he could withstand that pressure, because now also he just got knocked out, so him fighting against Nate, you saw that he couldn't take as much damage as he used to, which people were complaining with the people were always complaining with Ferguson, is that he took too much damage, unnecessary damage, because he kind of did. I mean, I love Ferguson, but the guy would really just harm himself when he didn't have to, And I think many people know this complaint with him. Like, many people are angry with Ferguson for going into these. I mean, the Gaethje thing was unnecessary. He didn't have to fight Gaethje. And he did, because the guy's insane. And, like, I think people joke around, like, if you were to go back in time and say, hey, don't take this fight, he would still take this fight. Like, if you went back in time and tried to warn Ferguson, he would still take the fight, because he's an insane, crazy bastard. I think we're about to die here, so I think I'll just let it be. I'm about to die. So yeah, I think it's good to end it here. I'm just going to keep ranting. But yeah, pressure that Khabib has will not be the same when someone like Ferguson goes to battle at the prime. It'd be at the very least 50-50. I think Tony takes it. Love y'all.